It's a beautiful, cool spring morning day and Easter tide, and we want to welcome you joining us this well. Follow this with a worship service at 10 o'clock. But today is Mother's Day, and we're going to be celebrating Mother's Day this morning during this session of Good Morning, Good Shepherd. But before we begin, I'll ask Andy if he'll open us with a prayer.
I'm going to ask you this morning to join your thoughts, join your hearts together. Let's make our prayer an intentional prayer to God our Savior early on this gorgeous, gorgeous day. This could have been a resurrection morning too. So let us pray together. Eternal God, we thank you for the gifts that we see apparently all around us, our family, our friends, for those we love and who love us back. But we also thank you for the gifts that come unseen, unlooked for, your patience, your love, your hope, guarding us. I ask your blessing upon this family of faith here at Good Shepherd and all who are dear to them. Shield us from the perils of the day and the perils our strength, our guide, and our hope. Amen.
Thank you, Andy. And you mentioned the gifts that we don't see or that are all around us. And we know as we're beginning to put our toe back in the water and to begin to open up our communities and economy, there have been some things that folks have learned in this kind of imposed sabbatical. And so would you just take a minute and talk about how folks might journal? I think you had suggested that what might be a way people might take from that something they carry forward.
All right. Being a historian at heart, historians always need written documents. Without written documents, no history. So we're living in a very historic time. Whether you realize it or not, this is a historic moment in American history. So I would ask you as a family of faith to use this time to keep some records. I would keep a little journal or a diary, and you may include things like what I've learned in this time of pandemic, what my family has learned, how we've changed, and please record what you feel. What do you feel about this time? We've been in it a long time, at least in our minds. So go back to the beginning if you can. What did you feel about this 6 weeks ago? What do you feel about it now? And keep that in a family journal and tuck it away, telling those who will come after you, this is where this is. And you will have an historical record that I will guarantee you somebody will research 100 years from now. They'll want to read those pages. So make that a family effort. That would be rare, by the way, a family effort.
Very good. Thank you, Andy. I've been out a little bit, and sometimes I've been concerned at what I'm seeing, okay? And what I'm seeing is I try and move forward. I see a lot of folks who I think are behaving as if this is over now. This has come to an end, and the worst is behind us. And so, Joe, I'd like for you just to say an encouraging word to our folks about this and how we go forward carefully over the next couple of weeks so that as few people as possible are injured by the need and the necessity for us to take up life again.
Sure. Careful is, I think, the operative word here, and that's what we've tried to do for these many weeks now, is be careful about our behavior so we can, as you said, mitigate the effects of this contagion as it runs rampant through the entire world, and particularly the state of Georgia. And if you look at this morning paper, state of Georgia cases are up, and those are just test positive cases. These numbers are all relative And I would encourage everyone, I know you're tired of hearing about all this virus stuff, but I would encourage you to continue to be fully informed so you can make appropriate informed decisions. Part of that information is the mask. That's been our latest mitigation that we've invoked, and CDC has recommended that, particularly if you are in an environment where social distancing, which in my book is greater than 10 feet, but that's the absolute minimum standard, when you're in that kind of environment, and that is for one reason predominantly, and that is the, quote, person who has the virus, looks perfectly normal, but is shedding it. And they're going to be identifying more and more of these people as the testing becomes increased. Interestingly enough, in the morning paper, Sheriff Roundtree tested positive for the virus, and he's on a 2-week quarantine. I guess 2 weeks is enough. But the interesting thing was, he said he felt fine. Now, was he shedding viruses? Maybe. Hence the mask when you go into closer contact when you can't social distance. These masks, if everybody's wearing them, will decrease, depending on the type of the mask, will decrease 4-fold, 6-fold, 10-fold your chances of receiving an inoculum. And these are viruses that are floating through the air that you're going to breathe in. So if everybody is doing this, it's another mitigating activity to decrease, as you said, the chances of you getting this. Because once again, the more people that get it, the more our resources to treat it are going to be taxed. Now, the hospitalizations in Augusta are starting to slow a little bit. And I think Augusta's done a great job. If you look at our numbers compared to every other places in the state, and I think we've done it because we had done these mitigation responses. I encourage everybody to do it. Do not put your head in the sand and think that this is over with. It ain't close to being over with. And we want to continue to do what we've done to diminish that chances of someone in Good Shepherd getting sick and even dying. And so I would encourage everybody, and particularly, I've been, I agree with you. I've seen very few people wearing a mask. I wear it whenever I go out, which is not very often. Well, let's do that. I really encourage you to do that to protect yourself. And remember, the life you save might be mine.
And that would be the most important thing of all.
In my book.
Yeah.
That's a motivational speech.
Yeah. Joe's got a saying these days, don't be a statistic, okay? Not everybody who gets exposed will get sick. Not everybody who gets sick will go to the hospital. And not everybody who goes to the hospital will die. But somebody has and will, okay? So you don't want to be that one person. Right. And it being Mother's Day, I think I don't know if it originated with my mother or not, but you've probably heard this before. You'd rather be safe than sorry. And that certainly applies here. We're not trying to ping on anybody about that. And Bunny, if you're awake yet, and
She
paying
is. She's been
attention,
texting me.
you
Yes.
as an infectious disease zealot like Dr. Bowden, Father Bowden, you may want to chime in here, but do put your mask on. And unfortunately, you know, everything in this country has to finally become political. So what I would say is, just because you have your mask on doesn't mean that you're a Democrat, okay? So wear your mask, protect others, protect yourself. It's a little hard though. It's a little hard because, I mean, it's now starting to where nobody's doing that. So I walked in a store the other day and somebody looked at me. I was the only one with a mask. They looked at me like, you know, Godzilla had walked in or something like that. A flat earther, I guess. They called a flat earther had walked in. Okay, Bunny, got any comments to add?
She's
Emily,
listening.
Roger, is Bunny,
She's
is she
listening.
awake?
Yeah, she's been texting me.
Texting you. Don't tell us what she's been texting.
No, I
you,
won't.
okay?
I won't. I won't.
Hey,
We
buddy.
don't want to know.
But she's
Okay,
listening.
well, just a couple of things here. We are in the month of May. We are in the season of Easter, the happy, joyous season of Easter, celebrating Jesus' great triumph over our ancient enemy, sin and death. We all know and believe, of course, that Jesus is the one who brings meaning and hope and purpose to anybody's life at any time and any set of circumstances. And for most of the days of our life, his good news is good news for us and helps us to live not only fully but abundantly. But there are also times when there's hardship and tragedy in our lives, and the only good news there is that will not come between us and God's love for us and what God has in store for us. And all of this, we believe, is on account of one reason only, and that's that God loves us and sent his Son to save us and do for us what we could not do. So that said, we are bringing this season to a close. We're going to continue this format to the end of May, we think. Good morning, Good Shepherd. A couple of more sessions will last, so I'll tell you a little bit about what's coming up. Today we're going to shift to celebrating Mother's Day. Next Sunday, who knows what next Sunday is besides the 6th Sunday of Easter?
Rogation.
It's May 17th, and we're going to celebrate Rogation Tide. Rogation is an ancient festival. You know, in most of European countries, it's planting time. It's time to get the fields ready to bear fruit through the summer growth months and produce the food that is necessary for survival through the long winters. And I suppose we've begun to take our food supply a little less for granted here. You know, we don't ever think really twice about where does this come from? Is there ever going to be enough? Will we get through the winter? Are we going to be hungry or even worse? And but that's not been the case for most of the time that human beings have lived on there. So Rogation was a time where the church asked God's blessings on the planting, the spring planting, that it would bear fruit and be a bountiful harvest in the winter, and of course sustain life through the winter. And so Rogation prayers are about that. That's typically celebrated in the days before Ascension Day, which Ascension Day, of course, is 40 days after Easter, which means it'll always fall on a Thursday. So this is 17, 18, 19, 20. It would be 21. May 21 would be Ascension Day. So we'll kind of celebrate Ascension next Sunday. Rogation, we've got a surprise for you. Another surprise coming to you next Sunday. So be on the lookout for it as we celebrate Rogation. Ancient custom was called beating the bounds. You know, in the English system, you have parishes as much as you have counties, and Louisiana is still an artifact of a time when you know, geographic areas were organized by the church and parishes rather than counties in Louisiana. But beating the bounds was going around the bounds of the parish, a procession, and checking the markers, the boundary markers for the parish, and blessing the fields and all as you go. We did that one time here. I think we tried to have a Rogation procession and beat the bounds of the parish. Of course, the bounds of our parish are zip codes 30904, 30907. And how many zip codes, Emily, have we got?
Probably 5.
5, probably. Most of our folks come out of 5. It'd be a long walk if we beat the bounds of our parish, so we don't do that. But anyway, May 17th, look for a surprise. Next Sunday morning, Rogation Tide, we'll celebrate that. May the 24th, we're going to celebrate lessons and carols on that morning in church, abbreviated service, hear the whole Easter story, sing some Easter hymns, and it's also Apostolic Sunday, isn't it, Roger? So all our graduating seniors and those boys and girls who have been good and come to Sunday school regularly, you can all look for gifts and surprises on Sunday morning the 24th. And then to wrap it all up, the day of Pentecost, the end of Eastertide, May 30th, we'll celebrate Pentecost. We'll have Eucharist. However, we're doing Eucharist these days on the 30th. And there will be more surprises delivered on Sunday morning to children of the parish. So that's the rest of the month, the Easter's coming to a big finish here at the Church of the Good Shepherd, despite the fact that we are separated and cannot be gathered safely, but we're still Christ people in this place, and still Good Shepherd, and still carrying on with our life and hope as you go about your daily life, making good witness to Jesus as the source of good joy and your happiness in this life. The magazine is out, The Shepherd's Voice. They're right here in the Lich Gate. They're online for you, a wonderful edition, lots of interesting articles in there. So the Easter edition of The Shepherd's Voice is out, and hope you enjoy that while you're still safe at home and doing all the things you ought to do. Okay, well, it's Mother's Day, celebrating Mother's Day. I'm looking at you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Okay, to get this started this
Mother.
morning. We want to celebrate Mother's Day. I think we'll just start, though, by acknowledging, as we become more aware and more pastorally sensitive about so many things in life, we've come to realize that not everybody grew up in Ozzie and Harriet's household or with the Cleavers. A lot of people came close, but not everybody grew up with that. Sometimes our mothers and fathers have disappointed us. Sometimes they have wounded us. Sometimes they've really not met their obligations as mothers and fathers to us. And then, of course, there are wonderful folks who would like to be mothers and, struggle with that. That has not come easily to them. So first thing we want to do is just acknowledge that this day can be a day that has some sadness or disappointment attached to it as well. So that said, I found it very helpful when thinking of my own life and the lives of others that, the truth is, well, Joe has a saying, and I think it's very good, we're all victims of our families. Okay? It's an honest assessment. We all get some good things from our families. We all get some baggage from our families. And I guess it's on a curve. Some people wind up really shorted as they enter the world, and others less so. I suppose if your parents were perfect, that would in and of itself be a burden that you would struggle with the rest of your life. Not through any fault of their own, but through circumstances beyond their control. But I found it helpful, because a child just takes that on. If a child's not getting something, they assume something's wrong with them. It can't anything possibly be wrong with these godlike people who feed me and all that kind of stuff. And then lo and behold, as you go through life, you find out, well, there's a good bit wrong sometimes, But I find it helpful when you kind of come to a place where you can say your parents, your mom, your dad, they did the best they could. Doesn't mean they did right. Doesn't mean they did what they should have done. It doesn't mean you didn't get. It just means through whatever the circumstances of their own lives, they did the best they could. That's a help. I find that to be a helpful way to let go and move on and not personalize what happened. And then, of course, it becomes very important to try and go forward from that and be better parents ourselves, better mothers ourselves. All right, well, enough said about that part of acknowledging Mother's Day. Roger, do we have a comment, or are you shielding the sun? The sun is in your eyes. All right, now, let's celebrate Mother's Day. Why would we celebrate Mother's Day, Lynn? Why is that an important day to celebrate?
Well, no matter what our history is, what our relationship with our mother has been, is, or maybe no relationship at all with our birth mother, the fact is mothers help create, they co-create life. So we cannot diminish the gift that motherhood is in that way. And we all, if we think we came from perfect parents, then we are in a delusion, because no human being is perfect. We know that. And it is
People are no what?
not perfect.
They're not perfect. I was waiting
know,
on it.
I know.
It didn't come. It ain't coming yet. Okay, go
And
ahead.
it is a hard fall when we can think that life is perfect, and we all of a sudden we grow up in this little human being where we can kind of look and compare. We all do that. It's not healthy, but we all are prone to compare, and we realize, wait a minute,
Yeah.
In fact, my family's just crazy.
Crazy. Yes.
But saying that, we cannot diminish life and motherhood and
Well, can I just, you are here, Emily's here, Harriet's here, you're all three mothers. So I haven't had that experience, but what is it like kind of to conceive and carry a child over a 9-month period? What is that
it's a
going
miracle.
through your head?
It is a total miracle. Right, Harriet and Emily? It is a miracle. You are part of a and it is a miracle. Your body holds this little human being for 9 months, you pray. And you were part of nourishing that body. And I personally, that is what drew me closest to God. I was raised in the church, but I certainly fell away. And when I became a mother, the miracle of motherhood is hard to put in words, wouldn't you say, Emily?
I didn't grow up in the church, but I will say that when I saw my first child, I knew there was a God.
That's me exactly.
Yeah.
That's me exactly. Even though I knew God, I realized the gift of life is precious, and
And I suppose being a mother, and particularly having a daughter, let's say, I suppose there's also some sense of you just wait.
oh
Okay?
yeah.
You just wait.
Listen,
you got problems with me, you just wait till you're where I've been, okay?
My mother is still with us, thanks be to God. She's 86, and she won't mind me saying this because it's the truth. We love each other, and on the other hand, we drive each other nuts. But that bond is so tight. I think that's why we can drive each other nuts. We're just that close. We know that when we disagree and I storm off in a huff, I can come back the next hour, the next day, and for the most part, things are washed away. So, but that does not come without effort, and love is work. We as women who bear children, or we are gifted with an adoption, or however, when we get to be a part of a child's life, we nurture that life. And with that is effort. It's hard. My mother likes to write poetry, and I asked her to share some poems with me in preparation for today. And her poem, I don't know if you remember Irma Bombeck, but she was a humorist, a columnist in the 60s primarily. And she was, I'm terrible with quotes, I'm going to try my best. My mother said, one of her favorite quotes said, I would have won Mother of the Year if it weren't for 3 lousy votes. And it was her 3 kids. So, although the perfect love we know in that little tiny creature that we can hold and nurture with our bodies, and we know quickly that it's a challenge. So there is no, love is always costly, isn't it? And it's worth the effort. God shows us that. But motherhood cannot be understated.
We would do well, I think, to recover a sense of the sacredness of life like that. It's a big deal to bring a child into the world. I mean, we know that that's, God is always renewing. God, the Creator, is not done. God is always, every second, as long as God is a creating God. So the highest thing we can do really is to partner with God in that. There are all kinds of ways we are co-creators with God, and but the highest way by far and away is to bring a child into the world, another human being made in God's own image. And I think at the end of the day, that's why by intimacy between people, sexual intimacy, so that's really the end of that. That's a big deal, and we do well to recover some sense of what a big deal that is and be more careful about it and in our dealings with one another around that. Okay.
Hey, Robert, one quick thing I don't want to forget. When I think of mothers, it's not just our biology that causes us to be, us women to nurture. I think about Jenny Bradshaw. She is a mother to this place like nobody I know. She loves the children of this parish like no one else I know. I've said it to probably all of you at one point. When I grow up, and I mean spiritually, I want to be just like Jenny Bradshaw. She's a mother
And
to
mothered all
so
those school
many.
children and teachers
Absolutely.
and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, her impact can be just so much. Yes.
Okay, some couple of comments. Number one, can you say something about the flowers? Did you already say about the white and the red?
Oh, okay, right. Something
Show
about
Lynn, show
flowers
your-
used to be back in the day. On Mother's Day, everybody went to church, of course, back in the day. Y'all hear that? Because that day's coming again. We'll be sitting at home on the TV every morning for the rest of our life. But people used to go to church, and so on Mother's Day, you would wear a red flower if your mother was still alive in honor of her. And if your mother was deceased, you would wear a white flower, okay? And it was a mystery to me. I don't remember too many Mother's Days. I wasn't in church too much. I don't remember too much church, but I think maybe we went one time on Mother's Day, but I remember my father. What a mystery it was to me that my father put on a white flower because his mother was dead, and I just couldn't conceive of what would it be like if your mother was not alive, Okay, so that's what the flowers are, okay? What's our other question?
Well, not a question, two comments. From Susan Christie. She commented on those people, mothers, who had to give their children back to God, whose children have passed away.
Yeah.
And then Ashley Pritchett says she's always laughing when she said
That her mother
that she would never say. Yes, the same things her mother said.
That's
Yes.
always, that is
Become
called,
my mother. Oh no!
that's called revenge, isn't it? Right, or vindication,
I
whatever.
don't know, it's called crazy,
Right.
but it's true.
Right, that is true. Well, I guess part of that can put us in mind, in one level, we're all mothers. The prime example for us as Christian people of motherhood, of course, is Mary, who says yes to Jesus. And it's pretty easy, a real heavy cover of piety. But I loved the movie. I think it was called The Nativity, which was I thought a very realistic presentation of Mary and Joseph as men and women, as human beings. And I think Mary really was. They must have been the most remarkable people in the world, to have been selected for the task of bringing, the almighty, powerful God who becomes powerless and vulnerable to enter into what He's made to redeem it and save it. That's just the most mind. But Mary, as the example of saying yes to God, welcoming, we talk about being born anew or born again or born by the Spirit or not by the will of a husband or anything like that. The virgin birth really is one way of talking about it's by God's initiative and God's initiative alone that anything happens. So when we say yes to God, either just welcoming God into our life as the anchor and light of our life, or just in a particular moment by hearing something tug on our heart or mind that says we ought to do something for someone, we are giving birth to something. I guess we'd say, using Paul, we're always giving birth to faith, hope, and love in every moment when we either say yes to God or not. Yes,
It's off the topic just a little, but it's from Bunny.
Bunny Williams.
Bunny Williams.
She's awake.
She's a mom. Happy Mother's
morning,
Day.
Happy Mother's Day, Bunny.
She says God gave mothers the gift of being grandmothers so that we could redeem ourselves for all the mistakes we made as mothers.
That is true. Yeah, it's nice, and there's a good bit of that in the community, and there are a lot of families who've been here for several generations, and so there are children who've grown up in Augusta with their grandparents being a big part of their life. And of course, we all love the little joke, what do children and grandparents have in common? Or why do they get along so well? They have a common enemy. That's right. That's right. Well, that's the little downside of love and family life in the world, that it can get adversarial sometimes, can't it? Okay, that's true. Yeah, and I think that's a nice balance. I suppose being in we're all in families. We all have parents. We all have a mother and a father. I guess you might say God help us. But that more than anything else puts us in touch, possibly with the relationship that God has with us as our Heavenly Father, or if you want, our heaven is the source of our life. Both the initiating source of our life as well as the bearing and sustaining part of our life. And I don't know where I was going with that thought, so I'll stop. It'll come to me in a minute. Well, it just puts us in mind of how God might feel about us, or it's conceivable to think that I know where I was going now. The unconditional love. So we believe God loves us unconditionally, and parents, I suppose, love their children. They try to make it unconditional. A lot of times it's very conditional, but grandparents, where I'm going with this is grandparents probably are better vehicles or conduits of the idea of unconditional love than parents. Parents have a responsibility to nurture and shape and cultivate their child, and that's hard work. And for the child, when that's going on, it doesn't always seem like love when you're being reined in or chastised or whatever is being done to you. My mother used to make me go across the street, our pitiful little house in Hendersonville, go across the street, and I had to pull off my own switch. Okay, pull off my own switch and get the bottom of my leg switched. I didn't like that. Ow, ow, ow.
And you always got the littlest twig you could find.
I don't think I was smart enough to make that calculation. All I remember is just watching my mother pull all the leaves off of it. Expose it. There it was. Okay. Yeah. Okay. What else do we want to say about mothers? We have happy memories most of the time of our mothers.
Robert, let me.
Go ahead, Andy.
Well, I had planned on telling that, but I will very quickly. I received a letter, I believe, on Thursday from a fellow North Augustan I hadn't heard from in almost 60 years. But my mother was a school teacher most of her life, and one of the things she imparted to children of whom she was their mother, you were in her class, you were one of her children, was the love of reading. And he wrote me this story that in the 4th grade, my mother was reading to them Nancy Drew's mystery, The Mystery of the Tolling Bell. And they ran out of days in the year, it wasn't finished, so he went up to her and said, "May I borrow the book?" And she says, "No, but I'll give it to you." And he said, from that moment, I knew the value of reading and of someone caring about you. Someone had the time to read to you, they care about you. He went on to tell me that he and his wife had been very successful in business, but because of that experience with my mother, They have endowed several school libraries with books and ongoing funds for books. So here out of an event 60 years ago, I still hear about my mother. And I think when I read that letter, and by the way, his name is Andy too, so Andy, if you're watching this morning, thank you for that letter. It made me cry, but it made me smile too. So for those of us, I think, whose mothers have passed on, we do shed a tear, we miss them, but oh, we celebrate them.
Robert, my parents were as close to perfect, I think, as you can get. They were both very God-fearing people.
Now we know what's wrong
Well,
with
no,
you.
and they were so blessed to have a perfect son too.
The delusion.
Delusional.
There was Mary and Joseph and Jesus, and then there were the Bowdens and Joe, right?
My mother loved one-liners to sort of keep me in line. And I've got a long list of some that just came in my head. She was always concerned that I would fall into bad company. And she would say, and I'm going, remember, Joe, if you lay down with the dogs, you're going to get up with the fleas. Birds of a feather flock together. And then as time would go on and I would accomplish things and I'd get kind of, full of myself, she'd say, Joe, you're getting a little puffed up with yourself there. You better let a little air out of that balloon or it's going to pop. And on and on and on. So all those sayings that I've heard them hundreds and hundreds of times. I wonder if anybody else had one-liners from their parents, that was kind of their style.
You're known by the company
Ooh,
you keep.
Known by the company.
I heard that all
Yes.
the time.
Don't ruin your reputation.
Yeah. Yeah. The most precious thing you have, it can disappear in a puff.
The thing my mother's line to me was, "Come here to me."
Come here to me.
Yeah. Most of the time it was, "Come give me a hug." Okay. I don't remember much wisdom from either one of my parents. I had older parents. They were wore out. My brothers did them in by the time I came along, and then my father was chronically ill, and they were. So I don't remember a whole lot of advice, but I do remember my mother saying, "Come here to me." I hated it, but she said, "Come here to me." Yeah, go over there and get a hug and all that. One thing I remember too is growing up, we all had. You didn't just have a mother; you had 40 mothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know where we lost that, but it used to be you had a bunch of mothers. So that phone would ring, and somebody else's mother was calling your mother, and that was welcomed rather than, "How dare you call me about my child?" It's the craziest thing in the world that children have become the masters of their households, and they run their parents' lives. And the school teacher's wrong, and the coach is wrong, and how dare you pick on my poor little child? And I don't know, that handicaps children in a lot of ways. We had helicopter parents, now we've got lawnmower parents, but parents removing from before their children every obstacle, and it's just so silly. I think about I'm going to get to it, Winston Churchill and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. All had rough childhoods, but it was overcoming those things that made them the great people they were. So we would talk about self-confidence or self-esteem, and there's a reason it's called that, because you can't get it from anybody else. The only way you can get it is by overcoming challenges in your life. And what parents just inadvertently do is remove all the challenges from before their child's life. And so children never so they wind up in life handicapped, crippled, can't deal because their parents mistakenly have done that. And part of that starts at the schoolhouse and with teachers. But like I say, back in the day, we all had 40 mothers, and if you were at home, if you were in trouble at school, or you were in trouble with somebody else's mother, you were in trouble when you got home. All right, what do we have out there?
Okay.
End of sermon. I'm not preaching today. Lynn will be.
I like it.
Lynn will be bringing a message of love and goodwill at 10 o'clock. And what do we got?
Okay, Mary Lynn Spellman.
Yes.
She just was saying that her mom's 96, and she's blessed to have her with us, and she misses being able to see her today, but is able to FaceTime with her.
That's great.
Ashley Pritchett says, her mom's one-liner is nothing good happens after 11. The only people out are criminals and axe murderers.
That's true. Your mother was very strict, Ashley, because most of the way that goes is nothing good happens after midnight.
Yeah.
But your mom,
Your
knowing
curfew
you,
was earlier than
Ashley, knowing you needed to push that up an hour, right?
Also, Walter Sprouse, his one-liner is, "You'd better tell me the truth because you don't know what I already know."
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Let's have some more one-liners.
Okay,
I think this
I got some more. Gay, right? Give the house a good name. Remember who you are.
yeah.
Yep.
Mary Lynn, your sins will find you out.
Amen to that.
Okay, that's all I got right now. Oh, wait. That's all I got right now.
All you got, Roger?
Bob Nesbitt says if they jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge?
Oh, gosh, I used to get that one.
Yeah.
I heard that a time or two. Exactly.
Is
Yeah.
that a challenge to everybody's doing it? Everybody's
Oh, yeah.
doing it.
Everybody's doing it. So does that make
Everybody
it right?
else is going to the party.
Yeah.
Everybody else is.
Well, I've got one for you too. Now, I've done this with my own girls, cause you know, everybody pushes a little, and they'd want to do things like go to a boy's house when their parents weren't home or something like that. And so, but we all know what the response is when you say no. It's the comeback is, "Oh, you don't trust me.
That's right.
You don't trust me."
You're right.
And the answer is, "Oh no, I trust you completely. This isn't about trust. This is about common sense." And common sense says you don't do certain things, okay? So anyway, we're rebuttal to "you don't trust me." All right. Yes.
Make your mama proud.
Make your mama
Oh.
proud.
Yeah.
And Sue Ellen says, Lynn's mom, I guess that's you, was the best teacher my children ever had.
Who was that?
Sue Ellen Moorfield.
Oh, thank you, Sue Ellen. Oh, so
And-
true. She's a good.
Jerry Chambers says, self-brag is half scandal.
Ooh.
Greg Smith says, you dot know dot what's dot right dot.
Yeah.
Renee
Austin says, she has eyes in the back of her head.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. We do.
That's right, you do.
Well, my mother went a little more towards the spiritual. She would say things. I decided one Sunday night I was not going to church anymore. And being Baptist, you went to church on Sunday night. So she came up to my room upstairs and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You don't have to go to church. Just remember the God who loves you, gave you life, gave you this wonderful family. He'll miss you. Just beat me now. Let me go to church."
I remember not getting my way and saying, "I'm going to run away."
Oh yeah.
And my parents would say,
Bye.
"Bye-bye."
I actually did run away one time.
Did you?
I
How far did you go?
took off, and we lived close to Boy Scout Road. I took off, and I was on the road for about maybe 2 minutes. And I got to the light on Ingleside and Boy Scout, and I said, "I don't know where I am or where I'm going." And my dad was coming home from work. He goes, "Hey, Lynn, you need to ride home?" I said, "Yes."
What are you doing with peanut butter sandwiches?
2 minutes.
Yes, 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes.
Harriet,
My,
1 minute. I'm sorry, 1
Time
minute.
flies.
Harriet D says your wants won't hurt you.
You're what?
Your
Wants won't hurt you. That was Mama's thing.
Oh,
Robert, can I say one thing very,
Please.
very quickly off this subject? I heard from Bishop Zach this week, the situation in Kenya is quite dire. He is trying to care for 30 people in his compound alone. Food prices are sky high. Please, if you can, I thank those of you who sent in checks. I appreciate that. Please don't forget Kenya. We need help.
Okay, very good. All right, well, our time is up. All good things must come to an end.
oh, Emily, you got to look at the.
And we
Did
thank
you
you
see
for
that?
joining us this
oh my
morning.
goodness.
See you next Sunday at 9 o'clock here for Good Morning Good Shepherd, Rogation Sunday. So come join us and we'll see you in church at 10 o'clock. Thank you and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy